Okay, you see the full screen, no?
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for inviting me. Second, I think I have to apologize because I will abuse you with a lot of information, and especially since this is a quite weird topic, and especially if you are not very familiar with energy analysis, this could be difficult to understand. On the other hand, what I'm trying to give you is an overview of a new approach. In general, what I'm presenting now in 50 minutes is covered by 1 week summer school. So it is not possible that I can explain in detail all the concepts and all the data that I'm showing. The idea is to provide what is called in jargon the epistemological breakdown. At a certain point, you realize that there are a different way of describing or studying an issue that you are usually describing in a different way, and hope that I can show you that this alternative way it has merit. So the talk is divided in 5 parts. The one was why we should study the metabolic pattern of social ecological system. What is the advantage of it? And so I will give you a few examples of what you can gain by studying society in this way. Then this is the technical part. Maybe we can go a little bit quicker through. What are the key epistemological implications that in general are not addressed by conventional models? And then how can we represent the metabolic pattern of societal ecological system? This again is technical, how to do an analysis of autocatalysis, because all the social systems are autopoietic systems, are self-organizing systems, so they are making themselves. And when you're dealing with this type of system, it's not a linear relation, input, output. If I do this, something happens. All the time, as soon as you do something, you get something in return, and very often at different scales. So the reductionist approach very often is not particularly useful for dealing with complex productive systems. Finally, you can kind of go into the toolkit, what we call the Marauder's map. Okay, so why we should study the metabolic patterns? First of all, because we tend to use models. They are too simple. They are simplistic in the sense they are not capable of understanding what's going on. I give you an example. This is a European project that we're working on, and we were asked, who is more efficient, Europe or China? That is, this kind of question. You love more your dad or your mom? That is something really, really embarrassing. You have to work 1 year on this question. So we try to use the approach of Metabolic to say, would you say who is more efficient in using food, a girl, a lady, or a woman that is breastfeeding? In the sense, if you are comparing apples and oranges, of course, you cannot make any analysis of efficiency. And how can we define whether or not a country is a girl, a lady, or a breastfeeding woman? So you can get what are the characteristics that makes them different. If you take China and Europe, the first characteristic is the demographic structure. In China, they have a much lower dependency ratio because of 1 child. So they have all adults. Not only they have all adults, but also the adults work 2,500 hours per year. So at the end, if you divide the hours of paid work in the economy by the population, in Europe, we have 730 hours. In China, 1,300, almost the double. Obviously, the 2 economies are different. Another example is, I'm showing this graph, that is historic series, how things have changed from 2000 to 2016, I remember. You can see clearly 2 things. On the vertical axis, you have the level of technical capitalization of paid work. It would be how much energy is spent per worker. So it's all the energy spent in paid work divided by the hours of work here. And here you have all the energy, all the hours in paid work, and this divides the population. So there are quite big difference. In Europe, you 6 times more energy per hour of work in the economy than China. China has the double of paid work hours than Europe. European Union is not changing much, remain more or less that, whereas China is building capital at an impressive pace. So of course, you cannot compare efficiency because these things are doing different things, no? So you have an elderly lady there, the Europe, and you have a girl that is growing very fast. How fast is growing? Beyond imagination. China used in 3 years more semen than the United States in 1 century, and not a little bit more, like 6.6 gigaton versus 4.5. This is the famous study of Atlas Minute. In order to compare, we have also to understand what they do with this energy. This is another example of metabolic analysis. You have on the vertical still the level of capitalization per workers. So the energy consumed in paid work divided the hours in paid work. And on the horizontal, you have the energy consumed in the household sector, not paid work, divided by the hours in the household sector. You can clearly see that basically the European are specialized in consuming. The only things they are big supply are malls. Whereas in China, at the beginning, they've been basically increasing the capitalization of the economy. At the end, now they are starting to increase a little bit the final consumption. You see at the end, when you get to 2003, 13, 14, you move to the right. So it is still an economy that is more focused on producing than on consuming. What happens if we go more in details to lower level subcompartment, and what we call it the opening of the can of worms? In reality, you see lots of things happening. If you are expert, you can understand what's happening. For instance, China is liquidating the farmers. If they don't know where to put them, for the moment they go in the service, go a lot in transport, especially because at the beginning there were a lot of people in the rural areas. The industry is very interesting. They start the conventional industry, then they specialize in labor intensive, and then at a certain point they adapt the textile and all things to India, Bangladesh, and they move back to a heavy industry. If you look Europe, in Europe nothing happened basically. We just consume more energy in whatever we do, in spite of the policy legend that the developed country use less energy. In reality, what is happening is that in Europe, this is the work in the economy. All the work in the economy goes in the service sector. And since the service sector has a much lower energy consumption per hour, the aggregate of the country go down. But this has nothing to do with technology, because when you are looking activity by activity, the activity are increasing the energy consumption per hour. Okay. Another very crucial point is the fact that we are using an enormous amount of hours of labor embodied in what we import. This is, the yellow part. Oops, this is Europe is on the top. The yellow part is the labor that we have, for instance, in agriculture, and this part is the labor that is in the item that we are importing in the agricultural sector. For mining, basically, we are importing everything, and also for the industry, the amount of labor embodied in the import is much higher than the labor that we have inside. And this is amazing because we have, in my institute, we have a big discussion that we have to work less and less. But I mean, we can have the economy that we have now because we are using an enormous amount of labor. If you go through the way of doing the analysis, again, I have papers. Those that are interested, they contact me. I can give you tons of paper on this type of analysis. Depends on the demographic structure, the workload, and then the import-export budget. And if you do this type of analysis, you see that in Europe, we are using 140 million workers equivalent. If you divide the hours embodied in our import by 1,700 hours per year, we will need 140 million people to which we should have the dependents, the children. So we more or less have 250 million people working on this planet for Europe. And as a matter of fact, I believe that Laura, that did this paper, calculated also the United States, that is much higher. So this is an important point, because in reality, if everyone would do the way we do, if China will do the way we do, Brazil, India, things, it will not be enough work to sustain the metabolic pattern of developed countries. So this is very interesting. So what does it mean? That not only Europe is an old lady and China is growing, but also if you are considering the implication of the labor implied in the import, there is not this big difference between Europe and China, because we will end up by adding the embodied activities here. And also, we have to recognize that China is breastfeeding us, okay? So this is just one way of looking at why we should look at the metabolic aspect, because we can understand better what is going on. This is another way of looking at the problem. I don't know how many of you know this. It's the killing curve, the concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere that is being recorded for 60 years or less. And then you can see the first World Conference of Climate Change, Rio de Janeiro, Kyoto, Copenhagen, Paris. The last COP, I don't want to put it anymore. It's really embarrassing. So basically, nothing is happening. We are part of a gigantic, I don't know, sort of matrix in which we believe that we are stopping the emission. We are using some, the plan is that with a tradable permit, is that those that are emitting, keep emitting. It gives money to those that are not emitting enough to industrialize. And nobody understands who can imagine that in this way you can reduce the emission. But in fact, we are not. But I mean, this is the policy legend that is used to deal with the problem. And so why we are sending all these people on private airplanes to do these embarrassing figures every year? Because we don't see the issue of metabolism. You know, would you believe someone who told you that next year Messi will eat 80% less than what he's eating now, and he will be keeping playing good quality football? Nobody would believe that, but everyone believes that we can cut 80% in 2 decades. These are the model used by the European Commission, integrated assessment model. Of course, they do with line and pencil, everything is possible. But the question is why we do not believe that Messi could reduce his emission? Because we have a multi-level knowledge of human metabolism. So we can imagine the whole Messi weighing 73 kilos, consuming 10 megajoule per day at the metabolic rate of this value. But then we know that there are parts of Messi. In Messi, you have the liver, the brain, and we can say for each of these particular components, how much energy is spent per kilo. As a consequence, this is the extensive variable, how much liver you have. This is a benchmark. What is the amount of energy per kilo? And then from there, you can get to the amount of energy that the liver consumes each day. So the liver consumes that, the brain consumes that. You make the sum, and you get that only to keep alive the organs, you are consuming 60% of the energy that is consumed. So it is obvious that there is no chance that Messi will reduce its emission. So what happens? You have here the body, you have here the amount of energy that is an extensive variable, the size, and the amount of energy per unit of size at one level, and the other level of the parts, you have that this amount of energy is distributed among different organs with completely different metabolic profile. The heart or the kidneys or the brain, they work they consume much more than other things. Muscle when they are resting, and this is metabolic, vascular metabolic. So basically what happened is if we are looking, like done very often in econometric analysis, to the whole, then you cannot distinguish Messi from ET or from the Incredible Hulk, because if they have different relation of the different organs consuming energy at different rates, you cannot detect if this is an apple or an orange. So how we can operationalize the concept of metabolism in society? We can say a society is a set of organs with an expected size, and these organs have an expected metabolic rate, a benchmark, okay? So the organs are the household sector, reproducing humans, service and government, reproducing institutions and social practice, manufacturing and construction, supplying wood and infrastructure, agriculture supplying food and fiber, energy mining supplying energy carriers of media. The last two are the endosomatic metabolism, the material going through the human body, and the energy mining is the exosomatic metabolism, energy and material going through machines. So we still control what's happening, but it's not inside our body. Okay. So looking at Catalonia, it's like Messi. We can define what is the total throughput, the total size. It will be the hour of human activity of the Catalan people. This is the automatic metabolic rate. This is the size of the compartment. We are measuring the compartment in hours of human activity. So the household sector is the yellow one. Building manufacturing, service and government, energy mining. And basically, we can see, okay, this is the total consumption of Catalonia. But then where this goes in the household sector, the service sector, agricultural sector, and we can see that because of the exosomatic metabolism, there are huge difference among the energy per hour that you are using in the energy mining sector is more than 1,000 megajoule per hour. What you are using in the household sector, it could be 6 or 7. So what happens is that you have in relation to energy intensity, for instance, this would be the energy consumed, and this is the added value produced. You have pay that is determined by the relative size of the household sector and the paid work sector. And the value of the paid work sector depends on the relative size of the service and government, agricultural and productive sector. Basically, we can go through different levels analysis. Every time we go to a level, we split the system in lower level components. And the values here depend on the mix of these three. Okay, it is clear so far? Okay. So, these are real numbers. This is Germany. This is how Germany does. This is the paid work. Then we can split the paid work in industry, agriculture, and service. Again, you see that the energy in the industry is going up. It's not true that we are better technology. No. What happened is that this is becoming smaller and smaller, and this is bigger and bigger. The problem of the decrease of energy intensity is due to the fact that we are less and less producing because we are importing, and then we are producing our GDP with the service sector. Okay, same in Spain. The only difference is they are producing less added value. If you compare with this, they are much more on the right, they are more on the left. But in relation to the energy consumption, the pattern is exactly the same. This is the United Kingdom, again the same. And then if you are looking all the European countries, or not all, but I mean quite a big sample, they are all the same. And what is happening here? That you can finally look at comparing apples with apples and orange with orange. You have, for instance, in Finland, is the clear outlier because an enormous amount of energy. Why? Because they are having bad technology? No, because they have a lot of forestry and they are producing pulp and paper, and this is the most energy intensive activity that we have in modern society. So what happened? The pattern is so strong that you can detect anomalies. Let's say this is Ireland, and at a certain point, Ireland starts producing an enormous amount of added value in the industrial sector by reducing the energy going into the sector. What happened? It was a big scandal. It was a tax evasion, basically. A lot of industry in Europe were producing in Europe, but they were declaring all the production as it were done in Ireland. I mean, it is pretty much robust, this metabolic pattern. And then the issue is why you have this metabolic pattern so robust. And then to explain this would be what we will see in the part 3. We may have a first answer to this. If we start putting together how much energy, how much human activity, how much power capacity, how much benchmark the exosomatic metabolism and the intensity of power capacity will be how much energy goes per hour. If you divide this by this, you get this, and then you divide this by this, you get this. No, at the level of the whole society or at the level of the household sector, you may have a series of vectors, what is called LUs. We get later on into this, and then you arrive to a point that you are covering all the human activity, all the energy, all the power capacity. So you have to have an accounting that provide closure on the value of this number. And then basically you start having that the sum of this number is equal to the number on the top, the sum of this is equal to the top. Basically, we have a vertical constraint of congruence. Then you start having that in horizontal, you have that these benchmarks must be consistent with what the specific compartment is doing. So, of course, if you are producing, you are manufacturing oil, fuels with a very, very small amount of human activity, these are 8 hours. So in 8 hours in Europe, we are producing all the energy that is consumed per capita. It's unbelievable. But then you must have an enormous amount of capital. So what happened is that by aggregating this data in a matrix, you start getting what we call the Sudoku effect. In the sense, the numbers cannot be changing randomly. And another constraint is that all these activities must be capable of reproducing the whole society with happy people instant. Because if the people are not willing to belong to a society, the society loses social fabric. And basically, it is very difficult to keep it together. That is more or less what is happening now. Okay, so if there are no urgent questions, we can go to part 2. And then the part 2 is about the fact that the analysis based on input-output is very naive and is not touching the real feature of metabolism, that is the process of autocatalysis. I don't know if you are familiar with the work of thermodynamic non-equilibrium, the distributive structure. You have that living system or distributive system, they are different from the environment. For instance, a tornado can do that because they are dissipating, producing positive entropy, but in order to remain stable, they need favorable boundary conditions. In the case of the tornado, they need cold and dry air going out and warm and moist air in. In the case of a city, you have matter and energy input and waste and emission in. In general, you can say that the biophysical process taking place in the atmosphere, they are linked to the fact, to the availability of biophysical processes. They are giving the input and taking out the waste. So, according to the theory of non-equilibrium thermodynamics, the circular economy is a policy legend. You cannot have a circular economy. The civil system must be open. They must get things from the environment and dump things into the environment. This implies that when we are studying energy, material flow, whatever, we are studying the relation of what is called in jargon structural coupling between state and pressure. The pressure is what the environment has to provide in order to make possible the expression of the state. So, what is the important here? You do not have energy, you do not have matter, like the vast majority of the model that we get. You must have a metabolic system, and then you can define what is matter or energy for it. I will give you a few examples later on. But what is strange about the metabolism? The metabolism doesn't start with an input coming from nature, from outside. It starts with an input coming from inside. So the cow starts foraging, use energy carrier. Because of this, get more energy carrier. Then these are more, the energy coming from the foraging is more than the energy spent in foraging. This makes possible to do other activities. With other activities combined with the foraging, make possible for this system to keep overhead. Okay, if you get farming, food is more. The energy in the food is more than the energy spent in farming. So this implies that you can have other things, and then you get an emergent property. The same if you are in an industrial society, you have the energy sector that spends energy carrier, electricity, fuel, process heat in exploiting primary energy source. Then you get back what is called the energy return on investment. The amount of electricity, fuel, process heat larger than the one that you invested. This as a surplus can be used by others that are expressing other activities that are required to keep together the system and operate. What is strange or new, that in this logic, you are not starting with energy or formal things. The energy for the energy sector is not the same energy for a cow, is not an energy of a farmer, okay? If you go for this pattern, what type of information you have to get from your model? First of all, what you need from the outside, okay? This is something that is not under human control. You must have something outside. So what you need and what you have to do inside, okay? And then what are the other functions that are needed to complement your original activity that start the autocatalytic loop? So why you need energy to do what? My point is that at the moment, the model that we have is not capable of providing information because it is impossible to give all this information using a simple model. If you see what is needed from outside human control, you cannot see what is happening inside, and then you cannot see what else needed within the society to complement the activity of the energy sector in this case. Give you a practical example. Let's imagine Spain is a statistic of energy consumption. So how much energy is consumed in Spain for electricity? If you are measuring using tons of oil equivalent, there would be the equivalent of primary energy sources, the things that you need from the outside. Then you use 36% of the total for electricity. Then if you go inside and you say what we have to do inside, and you see, okay, what electricity I need for my refrigerator, for how much fuel I need for a car here. So we are inside this time. Then you are assessing the energy in terms of energy carrier. And if you see, the numbers are not the same. There is no way that they are the same, because these refer to a definition of energy, which is the structural coupling of the society with its environment. This is an energy that is a structural coupling of individual parts with these are inside the black box and this is the black box interacting with the environment. Okay, so very often, especially economists, do not rely. They should not have energy. They're mixing energy. There is no energy. As a matter of fact, not even electricity can be sound, because there are different types of electricity. They are different in quality. Oh. So again, same logic. You have a horse, this is the energy converter, the energy carrier is hay. We can calculate 11 megajoules per kilo. This implies an external pressure. You need hectare of pasture, the primary sources. And then why you have these horses? Because you sell it or you like it or whatever, but it must be a reason for it. Okay? Rather than a horse, we have a car, the situation is completely different. Now the energy carrier is gasoline. Okay? What are the external pressures? The availability of primary source. You must have oil fields. And then why you have a car? Because you want to have personal mobility. What happened here? This number, megajoule of light oil, the 111 megajoule of hay, 44 megajoule of gasoline, they cannot be summed because they belong to different narratives, different definition of what are the conversion that are relevant. Okay, so there is a final important difference here that if you have a tornado, this is fully determined by physical law. So you can make a question, you can make assumption. If you have a bacteria, it obeys physical law, but is not determined by physical law. There is what is called a semiotic control. There is adjustable rules that define what it does. So unless you do not know how does it work, or what it wants to do, or how it's internally organized, you cannot define what is energy for it, or for it, I don't know. Okay, let's imagine go messy again. What are prime energy sources for messy? Rice, yes. Apple, yes. Ham, yes. Gasoline, no. Gasoline is not admissible. But what happens if messy has a conversion to Judaism? Basically, also ham will not be longer an admissible input. So this is when you are dealing with a system that self-organizes and decides for themselves how to do the things that they do. It becomes very difficult to establish a relation between what are primary resources, what are the conventions, and what are the secondary energy carriers. So we can, at a certain point, decide that this is what we need, or this is the energy, the information that we need to assess whether or not Messi can play football. And let's imagine he decides to play, yes, and then it's changed again. What is the message here? That we should stop to have models that you apply out of the blue. Yeah, you have a model, you apply to whatever. No, when you have a model, you have to understand the context and all the different factors that make possible to the system to express autocatalysis. So uranium is not a primary energy source in Italy, but it's a very good primary energy source in France. Without storage, if you do not add the storage, the wind farm are pretty useless because they are producing energy when it's not needed, and they are not producing energy when it's needed. We have a very nice paper done by Ansel that he checked the demand and the supply of France and Germany and Spain for I know many years, every 10 minutes, and you can really see that unless you don't have a lot of battery storage, there is no way that you can power a big society with intermittent. Okay, now we get into the more treacherous part. We need to stop using this type of analysis. We should try to have a different type of analysis, a richer one. You start with the fact that if you're using energy, you are having an input that is exploiting primary source to get the gross output. This has to provide back the part of the energy that you use, and this will be the energy sector, and provide the net output. Given this, the starting point, you will see who is providing you the primary sources, a natural process. There are flows, like wind, waterfall, or they are stopped, like mine or coal. Then you have why you are using this, who is using this, and to do what. And this is where, for instance, windmills are not good for people that want electricity all the time, whenever they want. Then this is the old society that makes sense. And then this old society pollute the environment. So you have to know whether or not this is classic problem with the accumulation of CO2 in the atmosphere, how much is too much. So basically, again, what type of information we want to have to discuss of sustainability? One, how much energy do I have to invest? Do I have it or not? Second, what I get out? This is important because the output input, the energy return on investment, determine how much capital, how much labor. Because if this is like biofuel, 1:1 to 1, 1.1 divided 1, that is a very low return on investment. I had to produce 11 liters of biofuel to have one net year. Then these imply here a lot of work, a lot of land. If you have like in the energy sector, in the fossil energy sector, then you get 1 and out of 1, then of course you have to have a small amount of labor and technology to get a lot of fuel coming out. Then what net output I have and how this output is serving the use in the society. Then what type of primary sources I'm exploiting and what type of supply I added. These are non-renewable or renewable. Then you have what type of end use I have and why I have that specific end use. What type of problem I have on the sea side. This will be waste management, environmental impact, and emission in the atmosphere. And finally, how much this society is depending on import. Because of course, like we are doing now, we import everything, we print money, we are doing pretty well, but this has nothing to do with our better technology. It has to do with the fact that we print money, we import everything. It is not very nice to acknowledge, but it is the way it works at the moment. Okay, so still alive? Can I keep going? Or okay. So how can we represent the metabolic pattern of social ecological systems? We have an example of group autocatalysis in ecological systems. I don't know if you're familiar with this graph. Is how the ecology represents an ecosystem. These are the plants. They are eaten by herbivores. They are eaten by carnivores. They are eaten by second carnivores. When they either die or with their injection, they generate nutrients. They are recycled here. So these systems are eating each other. The more they eat, the more they can use solar energy. So this is how ecological system works. Okay. And so in a way, we can imagine that human society works the same. Energy is used to make energy. Food is used to make food. Then with food, you make humans. Humans make themselves. The humans make technology. The technology make themselves. The technology helps to have the autocatalysis. Everyone is helping each other to do better. Okay. So we can imagine that we can say the agriculture and energy mining are equivalent to primary producer. This produce for humans, this produce for machine. The manufacturing system will be herbivores, and service and government and household will be primary and secondary carnivores. And then we can see below the structural coupling, from where the material flows enter into the ecosystem. No? They can enter from stock, non-renewable, or they can enter from fund flow, will be renewable. Now, this is the concept of endosomatic metabolism, exosomatic metabolism. We can say that for humans, it's pretty easy. You need semiotic control, and you know how. food and muscle, and they express functions. For exosomatic metabolism, it's more complex because you need to have human control, energy carrier, power capacity, material tools in order to express required function. Let's imagine you want to fly people, then you need to have a pilot, you need to have kerosene, you need to have the engine of the airplanes, and you have to have the wings and the other things. But what is important here, then we can define what we do as a vector of quantities, okay? So, for instance, we can say the energy sector is a flow of electricity, fuel, heat, plant and animal food, plus an amount of human activity, an amount of power capacity, and an amount of building and infrastructure. What the energy sector does? That's a process of autocatalysis. Produce energy for itself and then produce energy for the others. Okay. Then agriculture. Agriculture the same. Produce the food for itself. At the beginning, this was very little, just seeds for the plants, eggs for the chickens. But now that we are having a diet heavy on animal products, the agricultural system use an enormous amount of food for itself. In the States, you consume more than 1,000 kilos of grain, but the vast majority is eaten by the agricultural sector in the form of feeding plants. Then the manufacturer, the household, again, they produce human activity, children, keeping the retired people in it, and then a surplus go to the paid work. Then you have the manufacturing and construction. Basically, you have a self-entitling network. And this is the famous line of Nicholas Georgetown, and they say the economies are confused. The economy does not produce goods and services, but reproduce the process they are producing and consuming goods and services. You can see here that what is generated by this network is itself. It is not the goods story. This is a deep change in the logic of how to do analysis. Another important point is that if you, at a certain point, take out the tangible parts, the things that are here, and then from the picture, still you have what is called network need. The input and output, what is required, what is given to the network, to this node, generate an image of it that is notional, is not tangible, but still is very important, because this is where the network learn how to adapt and evolve. So you can imagine that this is a biophysical demand, biophysical supply image. This is what the society wants this type of biomass. And what the society offer, power capacity, infrastructure, energy carrier, and labor in order to have. On the other hand, from the bottom, this is what the agricultural needs to do what is said and what agricultural can produce. Of course, then you have what is called in jargon of complexity, coarse graining, that when you manage to have a balance of demand and supply, this would be the price, if you want, in biophysical terms, then the network is overheated. Okay. If you put together all these things, we come back to what we saw before as an end-use matrix, that all the sum of these must be equal to the total value of the top. This is the end-use matrix. And to see how the end-use matrix works is you have this value for the whole society, with how much hours, how much energy, how much heat, how much fuel, and these are the benchmarks. And then you make an added value, this would be the added value per hour. Then you can split the whole society in two things, household and paid work. And then, of course, then you can, for extensive variable, the sum of these must be this, the sum of these must be this. And then if you split the paid work in agriculture, energy, and mining, again, you have the effect of the Sudoku effect, that you can have forced relation. What is important in relation to the economic energy intensity? That each level has a completely different economic energy intensity. And you can see that if you have a service government, is the one that produces much more added value with less energy than the others. So the real economic intensity here has nothing to do with the technology again, has to do with the relative size of this compartment. Because of course, if I have a society that has only service government, Hong Kong, it will have a very low energy intensity, but it has nothing to do with the technology or the pattern of construction. And you can open, and then you can arrive to a certain point in which you can start looking at wood product, how these benchmarks refer to the actual technical coefficient they are used in the sector. So basically, you may have an idea of how much you can change this matrix up. Okay, keep going.
Yeah.
Alive. Okay. Okay, this is the scary part. Everything we do has to be done with 1,750 hours per year. This is 24 hours a day, times 365. This is the human activity of the population per capita per year. Okay. If you divide this in societal overhead, not working and working, you find out that we work only 8% of our time. Unbelievable, but true. So we, moreover, not only we work only 8%, but the vast majority of this work goes in the service sector. Okay, that is say a lot about how untenable is the existing part of development. Then the societal overhead depends on two things: not disposable time, and the service in government goes in transport and distribution, and services. Where the primary and secondary would be manufacturing, construction, and primary sector would be agriculture and energy sector. So 30 hours produce all the energy and all the food you eat in 1 minute. No? Just to talk about possible, impossible, or the biophysical concept. From where you get non-disposable time, from kids, from elderly, from people with disability, and the physiological overhead of us, of adults. You have to sleep every day, you have to eat, that's okay. So basically, a large part of our time is not disposable, even if you are adults that can work. And then in disposable time, not going in pay work, you have leisure, education, and social interaction, but this is a house for mobility. Has to be noted that all these hours are of work. These hours are paid work. These hours are unpaid work. They go in social programming. Of course, nobody cares about this because they don't tend to focus on the impact of the economy. And non-paid work is more than double of the paid work. In general, also, you get all the gender issue because in general, the vast majority of this unpaid work is done by women. So the idea is who is determining this profile of allocation of human time? The demographic structure, first of all, the social cultural identity, what are the acceptable level of service in the society. So we will not be capable of living with the service below 500 hours per capita. Then, of course, the biophysical process, whether or not you have natural resources or the import you have to use to keep together this profile. This is even more complicated. Try to make a relation between human activity and energy use, the metabolic thing. So assuming that you have a part of human activity going in pay work and a part of energy going in pay work and social overhead and societal overhead, you can calculate, and you already see that the difference is very high. In pay work, you use 125, what is the societal overhead on the 5, but then you have other things, and other things, and other things. And you can see the complexity of the relations that are inside the metabolic pattern of a society. People say that in 10 years, we change 80%. No, it's something very complex here. As a matter of fact, we have all these numbers. But what happened is that in order to understand how these numbers are forced on each other, it would be better to look at the way the human activity is distributed in society. The vast majority of the human activity is not goes for demographic reasons. Then you have only 2,300 hours of work. These work don't go for no pay work, choice and employment. So this part gone. You remain with 170 hours. The numbers are not the same as the previous one. The previous one was the average of Europe is saying, I believe, yesterday. And so then the vast majority of these goes into the service sector, and you get only a small amount of this 8,760 that goes into the agricultural energy and mining development. In Spain, the energy mining basically doesn't exist. All important. And so this depends on demography, this depends on social practice, this depends on welfare level, and this depends on resource technology, and how much you want to be dependent on import. You know, of course, the European Union, 80% of energy imported, 70% of steel imported, half of the working time imported, and then when you get a problem with Ukraine, you say, oh, wow, we are importing a lot. Where these people have been for the last 20 years, because I mean, a lot of these graphs or analysis are 5 or 10 years old, and this was extremely evident since a lot of time. And why we have people modeling our society that cannot see this obvious worrisome situation. Okay, if you want to see a difference, this would be again China and Europe. This is the demographic structure, the amount of service enrollment in Europe. This is how these hours go in the manufacturing and construction, where they go in agricultural fishing, and this is where they go in the 8 hours to the energy. And then if you see the majority, they go 7 hours, they go in the grid. Basically, you see the industry, agriculture, energy, mining. If you remember one of the previous slides, these are those sectors in which we are import more labor, are exactly this sector in which we can afford to not put much of our limited amount of labor. Important, the China with the double of hours they work has less hours in everything going in Europe. And of course, what they have a problematic here is a lot of amount of, a big amount of hours in agriculture for fishing. Is a long story, we can discuss for hours these days. But I mean, just to give you an idea, you can see that the system cannot change the way it wants. You have a lot of constraints on what we can do. Because everyone is talking about transition with a frivolity that really I cannot believe. In 20 years, we decarbonize, in 10 years, I mean, things are totally absurd, you know. Okay, so this is the jewel of the crown. This is a way of looking at the effect of impredictable loop. So two hypercycles. This would be the same end-use matrix, and this would be if you are looking here and you see the human activity, reproduce human activity, one part goes in service and goal, manufacturing, agriculture, and energy. So these are actual human activity. These are the metabolic rates. These are the benchmarks. So we can say the household in Europe is in Germany 80 megajoule per hour. If it is Spain is 4 megajoule per hour. If it is Uganda is 0.5 megajoule per hour. And as far as they go in Spain, if you are in Germany, it is 3 times more than if you are in Romania, and so on. As soon as you are multiplying this by this, you get this, so you have a forced relation with amount of energy you need. And what is important, you can make simulation. You can say what type of population you want to have, what type of sector you want to have, how much energy you need. Aligned to this, you get, okay, how you are producing this amount of energy gallons. And then you get, it depends on the investment that you do in the energy sector, that in reality has an internal loop, because you have to reuse energy to make energy, and then you go there. So if you start having this type of structure, you see that you have a hyper cycle of human activity that affects how much you can supply the profile of allocation of the workforce across the sectors. And you have here benchmarks that, depending on what type of performance you want from your sector, tells you what type of megajoule per hour you should expect for this type of level. And then you have another hypercycle here that, depending on what you are, how you are producing electricity, with the nuclear plants, with the wind, with the things, tells you how much labor, land, technology you need to have this supply. Of course, this type of analysis cannot be done using a model, a conventional model. You have to have what we call quantitative storytelling. You have to have an hypothesis here, an hypothesis here, an hypothesis there, and then you run different software to see whether or not you get find something which is possible to do. And you can do it for the energy mining, you can do it for the agricultural sector, is exactly the same, and for all the others. Basically, what happens, you can keep looking at the.
Mario,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt you. The sound just for the last 20 seconds became very bad. So we could not understand what you said. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Here?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Again, you're here the household sector, human activity. Of course, if you want to go organic, no, then you have to here, you will have a productivity of labor much lower than if you are high tech. No, if you go by hand, everything you produce probably 5 kilos per hour of labor. If you have high-tech genetically modified tractor industrial agriculture, you can produce up to 700, 1 ton of kilos per hour of labor. So depending on how you are producing food here, you will require a certain amount of human activity here. And then depending on what type of diet you have, for instance, if you are having a lot of animals, 500, 600 kilos of grain, we'll have to go back into the agricultural sector. So in order to produce 300 kilos of grain to go into the household sector, you have to produce 1,000 a year, because 600 is very eaten by it. Again, I'm trying to simplify this. It is pretty much complex, but what I'm just to give you an impression, depending on how much you consume and what type of consumption you are doing, because this is why you have here vegetable or animal products. Because if you are using animal products here, then in terms of production here, you will have an enormous difference in gross supply and its supply. It is clear. So, but when you are making scenario, when you say, okay, we are going okay. Here you get $700. Here you get here you must have something. Here we import energy. If assume that we will do energy on our own, we will have to put a lot of training in. If we go here organic, there is no possible to have the closure on this column. It's clear.
The audio is very bad, Mario. Mi dispiace perché I don't know if it's only me, but the voice.
I think you have to speak just in front of the microphone. Then it's good.
I believe that the microphone is better now.
Yeah, it's okay now.
Yeah. No, the idea here is that whatever you do here is affecting all the values of all the others. You see that if you are reducing the time to work, they reduce the week of working week, you will have less work here. If you want to have more organic production, you will need many more power farmers here. And then what happened to the other? Because if you see before, oops, I have to go back quite a lot. Okay, here. If you are increasing the hours in agriculture, you have to rearrange the hours on the other side. You see? So if we don't want any more importing oil and we want to do biofuel, these probably, as a matter of fact, we worked a lot on this. This will increase of more than 10 times, probably 120 hours here. You go organic here, probably 200 or 300 hours here. And then what happens? Why you take it? Then you will no longer have dentist or researcher or professor at the university, or you will have to enlarge the workload. I don't know what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we could make simulation of this. We are not to continue to ignore this problem. And then look at that. We are overheading now because we are getting 500 hours in imports. If you want to start to be colonial, equity, justice, whatever, we should stop to use the work of other countries. But then if you, this amount of consumption are in reality not guaranteed by 730 hours, but by 1,230 hours. You should have the hours that we are importing. What I'm saying that nobody knows how to do, but it would be nice to have a type of analysis done this way. And you say, okay, tell me your demographic structure, tell me how you are distributing the hours of human activity among the sectors, what the sectors do, what is the level of quality of the performance of the sector. Then you can start looking at how much energy you need, and then really it depends on how you are producing the energy. Because at the moment, we are not producing energy. You see the point? This part is not part of our metabolism. We are importing 80% of the energy. And moreover, the energy we are even the one that we are producing is gas, is fossil energy that is very, very, very good. In the sense you don't need labor and you use a very small amount of energy to get a lot of energy. So if we would go with the transition, zero growth, with zero emission, whatever, let me see how you do this. No, I don't know. I'm not saying that I know better. What I'm saying, it would be nice to start analyzing things in this way, because you can see whether or not things are possible or not, because these are flows of energy and the other flow of food. If you are eating, you need food. If you have food, you have to produce it. No, you have a set of biophysical constraints. They are pretty much clear and easy to make scenarios. And so then I would say that this type of analysis can be done not only for the energy, but also for food, and basically for also the other. We saw before the analysis of the time, no? Where the time goes, whether it goes in paid work or goes in the societal overhead, in no working, disposable time, or disposable time. What I'm saying, if you start doing analysis of the societal metabolism in this way, you get a wealth of information. It is totally missed by the type of analysis they are doing. No, they are just doing we reduce 20%, increase the efficiency of 20%, so we reduce the consumer 20%. No, if you increase the efficiency, you do something else, not if you reduce the consumption. No? Okay, so we are almost finished. How we are doing with something? How much I've been talking?
About an hour.
Yeah, you are talking since 1 hour.
Okay, but I can go very quick here. So what we do, we propose to use what we call the Marauder map. That is, this is a map. This is the reporter things. So depending on what you want to see, you can get in a specific narrative, a specific domain, and you can see things. So if you want to go straight, you see the end-use matrix. You want to do pressure, you look at the pressure matrix. You want to do externalization, you go to the next security matrix. When you want to do the trainability, we use the Steven scope. How effective interaction within social communities. And then this means how much time you have for your personal things, how much the social, the service going helps you in doing what you have to do. If you have nursery, if you have school, if you have social margins, and then you can see the impact in terms of the pressure on the ecological fund. So basically, this is the visualization of the thing. You have internal and use matrix that we saw before. Then you have what happened at the level of the household in the social practice inside the household. Then what are the flow in and out of the economy and how these flow are impacting the ecological fund. And of course, we have to have a virtual scope that is how much of these use are needed in our outside to produce what we are importing, and how much we are externalizing our external. Let me see. We can go. Here. So we have what is called a virtual scope. You can see how much of the commodity that you are using are imported, and then you can make an environmental end-use matrix and an environmental pressure matrix of what has been externalized. This is an example of Andorra, and you see that you can see the energy that they are, electricity they are getting from Spain. You can get how this is being produced in Spain, and you can calculate the amount of time, labor, water, uranium has been used for producing electricity that Andorra is consuming. And on oil, it's more difficult because oil basically is about things that the oil is coming from different places. We are assuming the share of how oil has been produced in the world. Or if you know better, you can have the share of the oil that is imported by the country, and then you can calculate how much labor, how much pollution, how much things is embodied in what you are importing. An example of application here is that this is the amount of land that is used by Europe compared with the amount of land that we have in production in Europe. The red boxes are how much land are we using, and the green is how much land are we using elsewhere that is embodying what we import. Okay. So wrapping up the Marauder map, you may analyze what it goes inside the box, and then is the end-use matrix. So this is good for see how stable is the metabolic inside. Then you can look at feasibility, that is the view from outside. That is, assuming the black box is okay, what happened with the flows that came in and came out? So the environmental pressure. So this is another type of analysis. A third type of analysis is how much is an issue of security, how much we are dependent on other economies, especially now with the volatility of the globalization. This is a very important thing. And the last is the sustainability. Do we like the given definition of our common good? Are we happy with the way the system is organized and the type of effective interaction with each other? And then, of course, it depends who you are asking, you will get different answers. And then the issue here is to have the possibility of dealing with the stability of the social fabric. In the sense that individuals are not having, and as a matter of fact, this is the problem we are having. We are losing identity very quickly, in the sense with globalization, all the identity about the household, traditional household, social values, community, everything is gone. Everything is going. So this is an important point to try to understand how change in the metabolic pattern is affecting the interaction with social values of people. This is again. If you want to see, we did with the result of the Magic project, we did a big project applying this, and we took 5 policy field in Europe, and we checked the robustness of the narrative they are using. And we found that in all 5 of the 5 to 4, the decarbonization, the biofuel, circular economy, and efficiency, and we find for all the 5 policy domains, the narratives were extremely weak, in the sense that they are totally incredible, not credible. So, and then if you go there are a short video with the cartoons, and then there are 3 or 4 videos explaining the problems. This could be nice. Okay, if you can still read this slide, congratulations, you married. This is my contact email, and thank you for your heroic attention.
Thank you.
Oops.
Thank you, Mario. Grazie.
Thank you very much, Professor. So now I guess we still have a quarter of an hour for questions. So are there any questions either in the room or via Zoom?
First via Zoom. Oh, I can start in the room here.
Okay.
So Mario, tell me if I'm wrong, but the way I understand what you presented is that you are essentially saying that an economy is a dissipative structure, that it has a number of organs which really matter, and you divide them into the following elements: so mining and energy production, agriculture, manufacturing and construction, services, government, and households. And then what you do, it seems to me, is that you perform some kind of material flow analysis among these various organs inside the economic metabolism, taking into account the hierarchy of needs of each organ with respect to the others. Am I right?
It is not exactly material flow accounting, because material flow accounting is an input-output. You got something in, something out. In this case, no. It's a chicken egg. It is an impredicative loop. So you must have a valid autocatalytic loop. It is different. It's a qualitatively different. Because then you get all possible nonlinearity. And as soon as you start doing this, you can no longer use conventional models in input, output, linear. No. And even you make computation. You have to do by part. If I do this, what happened there? If I do this, what happened there? What would be needed if you would like to do that? No? You have to do, we call it quantitative storytelling, in the sense that you tell me what you and in mind, we would, okay, oh, you want to do biofuel, fantastic. Biofuel you want to do, how? You put it in, you see that it's not possible. It's not possible. I mean, it's not nobody's fault, is that it has a very low return on investment. So if you have 1.5 to 1, you have to produce 4 liters to 1 liter. So it explodes the amount of land you need to farmers, blah, blah, blah. And doesn't get into the, when I was looking, but we were trying to look at the two hypercycles, they are affecting each other. It doesn't match there. And moreover, we are at the moment in a situation that is a scandal. We do not produce anything anymore. We are printing money. We are using all our workforce for services, and we are importing. I don't know. By doing more of the same, we expect to do the transition. I don't know. Because I am here in my institute, we have the growth. And we have to work less. We have to, por favor, we cannot work less. We will have to work much, much more. Because, of course, this is the colonialism. We are working less because the Chinese and the others are working for us. And later on, mining, all the mining is important. All the energy is important. And then, I mean, I found incredible the behavior of the commission. And now they discover that we are 80% dependent on the import of energy. And where these people were in the last 20 years? Because I mean, I assume that someone was doing some analysis about energy security in the last 20 years. You know. So Putin, like, is not. It was logical that sooner or later someone will present a bill.
Yeah. So do you have a, because you showed us a lot of data. So do you have a running model for one country or one region, for Catalonia maybe?
So we have a lot of application of one at a time.
Yeah.
So we have about the level, about the important things. We never did a platform. This is what we would like to do. So we try to get money for it. To do a platform in which we can establish a link between the different analyses done one at a time. We need, for instance, all the analysis what will be needed for Europe to enter production. We did what happened with energy. We did what happened in the housing sector. If you change it, we did, you know, we have an analysis of all the end-use matrix of Europe and end-use matrix of Europe compared with other countries. So what I'm saying, we have all the data for the different pieces separated. We never did this, what I was telling now, the fact that you can start making quantitative storytelling. What if I do this and you do that? But however, if someone is interested, you can write me. We have we published like 20 papers. There is a lot of papers. What is missing is the platform on which people can play in terms of scenarios.
Okay.
Okay. I think Grégoire has a question.
Yeah. Hi, Mario. It was linked to what Gael was asking. That's why I jumped on trying to get the microphone. I wanted to ask whether there was nonetheless some correspondence between your data and the data that they built in the material flow analysis community. And if not, on what raw data do you use to compute yours? And also I have just another question, if I can say it at the same time, and then let you reply. So you described why we could characterize, say, the European Union economy as an elderly in terms of metabolism, but that was descriptive, and I wonder if you have some idea why is it so? Why is it so that this is it? This is old age that the Western economies seems to have reached, metabolically speaking.
Yeah, I mean, in relation to the first question, I just watched a video, TED video, about the speaker was saying, when I was a kid, I believed that the milk was coming from the fridge, no? And this basically of the way the economies look at material flow, no?
Like Baudelaire.
If you are in a situation which what we are using are secondary flows, are not primary flows. Okay. So in material flow accounting, first of all, they are mixing flows of all types. No? So if you have rocks, construction material, no, you have estimated they are because I work with them. I mean, we have a project together. So you have like everybody last, right? Actually, the construction material, 100 million plus or minus 100%. Okay. How many computers? 10,000 kilos plus or minus 3%. And so I'm an engineer, so you cannot solve 100 plus or minus 100% to 10,000 kilos plus or minus 5%. So basically, if you are not very careful in sanding material, you have to see which material go to which sector. Because if you are aggregating in the central energy, you aggregating electricity, fuel, coal, is a number that doesn't have any meaning. It's not useful because it doesn't not participate in any catalytic group. It's not an autocatalysis. So you cannot know whether they're useful. Another important point of the material flow, they are not considering water. Water is a material, so far, to the best of my knowledge, to evapotranspirate the biomass that we are consuming, you need 2,000 times more water than all the material, the solid material that we are processing. So, if you are looking for what is outside the Geneva, basically you realize that the material flow company is from the real thing. So what we account in the end use memory is really secondary flows. And these are easy to data. But then in order to get how much primary flows you need to get to these secondary flows, you have to define reasons. How much material you need to do a certain amount of kilowatt hour. It depends on how you produce that. If you produce with nuclear, you need uranium. You produce with waterfall, you need water. So you start getting the relation between what is consumed inside and what is in outside is not univocal. It depends on a lot of things. So if you want to do an analysis, it's much better that you have a unit in which you say, here I map what you want to have inside and what is needed outside. That will be the energy sector. And then what you are eating inside and what you need outside will be the agricultural sector. And you don't have one-to-one mapping. It depends on a series of assumptions. I don't know if I'm explaining myself. But material flow accounting, you assume that it's going to go on a second, no? It depends. So it is important that you are making evident what are the factors that are affecting the relation between internal flows, the secondary flows, and external flows, the pressure. And these factors depend on the identity of the society. Another example is that I am eating 2,500 kilocalories. Okay. If you are eating beef, you are consuming an enormous amount of grain. If you are eating chicken, no, you need 12 kilos of grain to have 1 kilo of beef. You need 1.8 kilos of grain for 1 kilo of chicken. So it's not eating 2,000 calories, depending on what type of food are you eating. You see what I'm saying? I don't know how to explain it, but I mean, it's not simple. Unless we do not have a system capable of identifying what are the specifications that you have to put in to understand the relation between input and output, assuming input and output, or even worse, throughput, like material, energy. There is no energy. There are energy forms. They are converted in each other. So this is the difference probably. In our data, when we discuss of end use, they are secondary. But then we make a distinction between peak electricity, base load electricity, intermittent everything, for instance.
It made me wonder, maybe there is just some flexibility in the concept at the level of what is an end use, what is useful as an end use. Maybe it's on the term useful that you used that I...
Is needed to close the functional cycle. This is why I was showing the mysterious things, no? You have to add that the energy sector is generating the energy consumed by the other. And what the other are consuming depends on how the energy sector is producing energy. And what the other needs depend on what type of material standard of living you want to have and what demographic structure you have. So unless you are not defining each of these four things, you cannot define any things, you cannot make any model. Because moreover, things can change, you know?
Okay. I think we pretty much reached the the time. Is there any other question, or is that fine for all of you if we stop here? Okay. So
maybe just one more. Thanks a lot, Mario. We are going to come back to you. We need to digest, of course, what you said. We need to read more carefully your book. And certainly we will come back to you.
Okay.
So thank you very much. It was very, very helpful.
Oh, we have a deliverable that we need for the project in which there is a more or less presentation of these things, plain and reasonable.
Okay.
Okay, guys.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
thank you very much. Thank you again for joining us, Professor, and thank you everybody. So next week we don't have any session because it's Thanksgiving here in the US, but the week after we'll host Matthew's Cressel in person. So I hope it will be a nice meeting. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Guys, I have a proposal for someone to invite on December 12th, but that's a Monday. I don't know if that could do it.
You have to talk
Yeah.
to Clémence.
You can
Okay.
send me an
I will
email.
send you an email. Okay.
Great. Thanks.
Cool.